The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission has now begun a 5-day process of inspecting the voters' roll. This is ahead of the upcoming elections in the country scheduled for August. This process began yesterday and will end on the 31st of May. Meanwhile, the Afrobarometer report has revealed that over 50% of Zimbabweans don't trust the Electoral Commission. For more on this, we're joined this morning by the spokesperson for the Citizens Coalition for Change, Fadzayi Mahere, joins us via our video link this morning. Fadzayi, it's great to see you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on to the program. Wow, 50% of Zimbabweans don't have any trust in the Electoral Commission. Of course, this is not new.
Well, most Zimbabweans obviously know that the only way out of our deep-seated economic, socio-political and governance crisis is for us to vote overwhelmingly for change. Tied to that is a demand that the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission act in accordance with the Constitution. The Constitution requires them to be independent, non-partisan, and to not take the side of any political party. But what we've seen over and over is that the Electoral Commission is not acting in accordance with this constitutional standard. And I'm sure this is exactly why most Zimbabweans are demanding that ZEC does what it's supposed to do. And until it's demonstrated that independence and that willingness to hold a free, fair and credible election that's verifiable as stipulated by our law, that's the only way we can have confidence in the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission.
Well, how do we translate the lack of confidence in the Electoral Commission with the voters' roll, Fadzayi? Are those two issues pretty much interchangeable? And of course, you as the Citizens Coalition for Change, what you're asking is for Zimbabweans to go out and actually inspect the roll.
Well, the number one demand before the election even takes place is that we have a copy of the voters' roll. Not only that we're given a copy, but that we're given an electronic copy, and that this electronic copy is independently audited. We've seen in a number of elections across the continent, and in accordance with SADC's guidelines on elections, that it's a key imperative that this voters' roll must be tested. It must be audited to ensure that there are no ghost voters, to ensure that there are no repeat voters reflected thereon, and to ensure that those who are reflected there, their details are accurate. So even before we get to the inspection process, which is taking place, we insist on getting a copy of that electronic voters roll and for independent auditors to comb through it. We saw in the recent Kenyan election that KPMG, an independent audit firm, was able to audit the voters roll. That's the sort of standard we expect for an election in Zimbabwe. We are not satisfied at the moment that that constitutional imperative of freeness and fairness is being adhered to in regard to the voters' roll, because recently Mr. Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF were sending text messages to all citizens saying, please join this WhatsApp group. The only way they could have gotten the details and our information, which is in accordance with the new boundaries that were freshly delimited, was if they have a copy of the voters' roll. And so we are saying to ZEC, you cannot favor one political party. You cannot give the voters' roll to ZANU-PF and deny that same voters' roll to the CCC and other citizens and other civic society organizations. The law clearly states, and the Constitution is supreme, it says we must have a copy of that voters' roll. So we insist on it. A voters' roll is like a syllabus. You can't go into an exam not even knowing what the syllabus is. So we demand that. And the only way citizens can have confidence that ZEC is acting in accordance with the Constitution is if they follow those basic requirements.
I mean, the fact that this 5-day process of inspecting the voters' roll is taking place now towards the end of May, Fadzayi, in a context where the election is scheduled for August, even that inspection, isn't it quite late? Because I remember calls from CCC and other civil society organizations, even earlier this year, asking for when the electronic copy of the voters' roll, as you say, will be released, but also when the inspection would begin.
We have been demanding an electronic copy of the voters' roll since January, and we've written more than 5 letters to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission demanding it. We've gone to court to demand it. We've also gone to the multi-party liaison committee that's held by ZEC, that's convened by ZEC, to make this demand for the voters' roll. We simply cannot understand for the life of us why it should be a secret. Now, coming to the inspection process, if ZEC has called for an inspection of the voters' roll, it means that voters' roll is available. It means that they must have an electronic version of it somewhere. Why can't it be publicly availed? This is not something in which they've got a discretion on. They have no choice in the matter. They have to make it available. And the key question every citizen is asking is, why is it a secret? That does not give confidence to the citizens that they're doing the right thing. And we're not going to sit back and say, no, elections don't work. We continue to demand and mount political pressure on them to do the right thing. You cannot take away, not ZEC, not ZANU-PF, nobody has the power to take away the right of citizens to exercise their vote. This is something that's constitutionally enshrined in Section 67, and we're not going to let go of our demand for the voters' roll. Now, coming to the inspection process, which commenced yesterday, we were extremely concerned that in a number of the centres, ZEC simply didn't put up its inspection stations, and yet these were publicised at least a week ago. We expect better from ZEC, especially when we're just barely 3 months away from the election. They have to get their act together. They were given millions in funding. The Constitution and the electoral law are very clear. They know what they're supposed to do. This is not the first time we're having an election in Zimbabwe, so we expect ZEC to do the right thing. Citizens want to express their will decisively in the upcoming elections. We're going to this election with one mission, and that's to win Zimbabwe for change. And so we expect ZEC to make sure that all the facilities and tools are available for citizens to do that. And we expect it to be done in a free, fair, and credible manner.
Suffice to say that these outstanding issues, Fadzayi, don't bode well for how the elections will unfold in August. What are some of your fears?
Well, as the CCC, our big call to citizens, and this is something we've been working on since our formation on the 24th of January 2022. The big task will be around defending the vote. And so far, we've put in place very strong measures to ensure that, A, we've got the 48,000 polling agents that are required in every single polling station, so that whatever shenanigans are attempted by ZANU-PF or by the electoral management body, we have citizens on guard to ensure that they don't, conduct any of these electoral malpractices. The other thing that we've done is we've carried out a large mass-scale voter registration campaign that has gotten over 2 million additional voters onto the voters' roll. And so what we are calling for is a big vote, because a big vote will translate into a big win, which will make it extremely difficult for any rigging to take place. And what we've said to citizens is that apathy kills. Apathy is just not an option at the moment. Just going into the store yesterday, a 5 kg packet of chicken is costing 43 United States dollars. That's not a normal economy. We've got the highest hyperinflation rate in the world, over 700% according to economic experts. Half the population, 49% according to the World Bank, are living in extreme poverty. We have no choice. We cannot continue in the way that we're doing. And when it comes to freedom, Zimbabweans can't breathe. This dictatorship is a full-blown dictatorship. Zimbabwe has become an outpost of tyranny. We've got political prisoners, including Job Sikala, Jacob Ngarivume, 5 UZ students who were arrested just this last week for just demanding a better society. We cannot continue on this road. We've got an undesirable organizations, a statute that's hanging in the balance that's going to further stifle civic space. We've got business continuously being strangled by poor economic policies and draconian measures that are threatened and implemented by the Minister of Finance and the Reserve Bank. We've got a gold mafia that's looting the country dry, at least 5 million they're looting out in cash every single week. We saw this in the documentary. 100 million is lost to gold smuggling every year. We've got lithium, chrome, all these resources that should be, benefiting the public, and yet they're not. We've got public hospitals that are on their knees. Teachers are underpaid. We've got nurses that are fleeing the country in droves. Almost every citizen now is becoming a nurse aide just so that they can get out. We can't continue up on this trajectory. We've got load shedding. South Africans complain about load shedding. That's nothing. In Zimbabwe, 20 to 23 hours every single day of load shedding. That's clearly a government that's failed to govern, and the only way to remove them is by voting decisively for change in the August election.
From everything that you've just outlined, Fadzayi, one can only gather that this government wants to stay in power because it's lucrative to do exactly that. Even you're speaking to us now on the channel. You've talked about the other key arrests that have been made, arrests of activists in Zimbabwe. It's a risk for you, even speaking to us this morning.
Yes,
how do you balance that?
Well, it's an absolute risk, but that's the price we have to pay for freedom. And we would not risk our lives and our freedom if we didn't sincerely believe that change is possible. Of course, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of, very sophisticated political organizing, especially in an environment where they continue to shrink the political space. But, when ZANU-PF is behaving in the way that it's doing, panicking, it's got its back against the wall, it's completely divided. They're absolutely clueless. As the economy has entered the election, the citizens have one simple task. Let's just unite and vote for change. That's the only way out. The only song in town at the moment is let's all vote. Let's all vote. That's the only way we can do this constitutionally. We're a peace-loving nation. We've always said that peace is the only, imperative, but at the same time, we have to couple that with action, political action, where we speak decisively in the ballot box. We've said in the rural areas, we've put in place, peace monitors to ensure that those who are voting in rural areas are safe. We've engaged leaders at various levels in those traditional structures. We've gone to every single village. There are 36,000 villages in Zimbabwe, and we've got the CCC represented in all those areas. One of the unprecedented features of this upcoming elections is that we've conducted a dedicated, for the last 2 to 3 years, rural penetration program. And ZANU-PF didn't see this coming. That's why they continue to say that Advocate Nelson Chamisa must be killed. Those who support CCC in the rural areas, their homes must be burnt. The CCC must be crushed like lice. It's because they can see the defeat coming. And I'm glad you made reference to the Afrobarometer report, because the same Afrobarometer has reported that if a snappy election were to be conducted, Advocate Nelson Chamisa has won. The same findings were made by Sabi Strategy Group, where they said that the CCC would win resoundingly in an election if it were to run against ZANU-PF today. And so the writing is on the wall. Their own internal data is telling them the same thing, that the CCC is geared for victory. So what we've got in the electoral environment currently are echoes of 2008. And we all know that the opposition beat ZANU-PF resoundingly in 2008. The only difference this time is that we have to ensure that political victory translates into a transfer of political power. And we've called upon SADC, we've called upon all of the international community to monitor this election very carefully. We all know the recommendations that were made post the 2018 election. We know why that election was disputed. All we are calling for is an election that stands the test set out in the SADC guidelines on elections. We just want a normal election in Zimbabwe where the will of the people is respected. That shouldn't be rocket science. 43 years after independence, all we're saying is let's respect what those brave men and women fought for in independence, which is one man, one woman, and one vote.
Fadzayi Mahere is the spokesperson for the Citizens Coalition for Change. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.